Listen, I'm not really supposed to be telling you these things, so listen up, would ya? My name's Dr. Angelique, but to my squad I'm Angel. I'm one of the only surviving members of Mobile Task Force Kappa 42, also known as the Lucky 7. Call us what you will, but consider us a task force for... I'm here to tell you about the SCP projects, and I'm here to tell you about what we do. Well, what I do. Why am I going to tell you this? Simple. I'm as good as dead anyway, and I'm your best bet. They're going to execute me when they find out about this. Of course, if some depraved abomination doesn't get me first. Honestly, I'm not worried. I'm not a member of the Lucky 7 for nothing, so pay attention. I'm about to give you some important information. Without it, you're as good as dead too. Just make sure you pass this tape to as many people as possible so they can't trace it back to you. They'll execute you on the spot. Now, this information might not come in handy anytime soon, but trust me, it will come in handy. Let me first begin by explaining what the SCP projects are. SCP stands for Secure, Contain, and Protect. As for what the projects are, well, that's pretty flippin' hard to put into words, kid. Let's just say there's a whole organization dedicated solely to securing and containing them, so that they don't screw with humanity. Or, kill everything. In this first message, I will be explaining some basics that you'll need to know if you're going to survive both the SCP organization's silencing efforts and the projects themselves. I'll start with security clearance levels. You'll need to know what you can be in trouble for knowing, and what's common knowledge before acting like you know how to defend yourself. Even if you manage to take down a project using my insider info, the organization might just execute you on sight for having classified intel, so listen up. Let's start with level 0. Standard operating personnel. Personnel at this level are not permitted any contact with an SCP object. Breach of this protocol will result in immediate termination of the personnel involved, so just play dumb if this ever comes up. Level 1. Standard security clearance for staff involved in the maintenance of an SCP object. Level 1 clearance is usually appended with the SCP object the personnel have clearance for. Example 1/173 if the personnel were involved with Object 173. Level 2. Clearance level for staff involved in overseeing an SCP project, appended with the SCP object the personnel have clearance for, separated by a dash for those with clearance for multiple SCP objects. Example 2-173-847-423. You probably don't want to be one of these people. Level 3. All general security staff for Site-19 or any other site housing an SCP object are required to have this level of clearance and are permitted access to all non-Keter level SCP objects. We'll get to the different levels later. Level 4. Command level personnel. Permitted access to all non-Keter level SCP objects. These are the people you probably don't want to mess with. And then we have level 5. The highest ranking senior staff. Most personnel at this clearance level are overseers. Certain members on senior staff have been given level 5 clearance due to repeated need to work on Keter level SCP objects. These people are the people you don't want to run into, don't want anything to do with, and don't want to hear about what I'm telling you right now. Note, the security clearance structure is independent of any other military security clearance structure, so don't try to wave around any special treatment just because you happen to go through boot camp. If you happen to go through boot camp. But chances are you didn't go through boot camp. You're just on YouTube right now and you happen to stumble across this video. But don't say I didn't warn you. Alright, there's also some non-standard security clearance levels. I'm about to tell you about them. Hopefully you never have to use any of this information. We're going to start with Class D. Class D personnel are designated staff used to handle the Keter level objects. Warning. Class D personnel are not permitted interaction with Class D personnel assigned to different objects or SCP personnel, so don't try to intermingle if you happen to pretend to be a Class D representative. Class D personnel are recruited from prison inmates. Condemned persons are preferred. In times of duress, Protocol 12 can be authorized, allowing recruitment of innocents or persons incarcerated for lesser crimes. Yeah, that could be your family and friends, so this is why I'm telling you these things. All Class D personnel are to be terminated at the first of the month, and a new staff member must be ready to replace them. So, Say you've been pretending to be a Class D representative, don't do it for more than 30 days, because you'll be shot on the 31st. Yeah, that's what terminated means. All Class D personnel are to be given a minimum of 1 polygraph test at 1,800 hours on a daily basis. I hope you're a good liar. Failure to comply with this results in termination. Again, termination doesn't mean you're fired. Termination means you're shot in the face. Failure to pass the test will result in termination. Again, termination means being shot in the face. In the event of any abnormalities, termination of an entire Class D personnel is advised, as well as any SCP personnel that have had basic interaction with them. So basically, don't hang around with Class D people, because if your Class D people mess up, you get shot in the face. Okay, let's move on to Class E. Class E is temporarily affixed to the start of a security clearance, e.g. E1. This is used when a new SCP object has been discovered, but is still in unsecured or uncontrolled state. E-clearance personnel are tasked with bringing the SCP into effect and maintaining it. Once the SCP are in place and the object is secure, the E is removed and the personnel are given the appropriate number on the end of their clearance. It would be pretty easy to pass as a level E, but it's also pretty easy to blow your cover, so I would just not pretend to be anyone, actually. I would just try to avoid that completely. Alright, we're going to move on to O5X, the Overseer level. Overseer level clearance is given only to the directors of the SCP Foundation. The X indicates their number, ranging from 1 to 13. O5 personnel are permitted access to any and all data related to the SCP objects. However, due to the sensitive nature of their position, O5 personnel are not permitted to have any direct contact with an SCP object, nor may they enter any site housing an SCP object under any circumstances. So basically, on the off chance you manage to pull off the act that you're one of the 13 O5X members, I don't recommend you get anywhere near a project, because that's totally going to blow your cover. Alright, you got all that? I know I'm moving pretty fast, but there's a lot to cover. Over 2,000 projects, in fact. Hope you're ready for that, champ. Anyway, now we're going to move on to part 2, project classes. I'm not going to make this frilly, just listen to what I have to say and store it away in your brain. Knowing is 75% of the battle. The other 25% is being good with a knife. Alright, let's start with the safe class. Any SCP object classed as safe is usually little more than a curiosity to research teams, but is still anomalous enough to warrant containment in some form or another. Any SCP object classified as safe can also be interacted with by any member of staff regardless of security clearance. This is also the only class of SCP object that anyone of O5X clearance is permitted access to, even though they are under controlled circumstances. Keep in mind that safe class objects are not completely harmless. An automobile or an AK-47, for instance, would be considered safe, although it is capable of killing human beings. However, its functions are understood, and the reliable safety measures can be taken to avoid harm. Safe SCPs may sound safe, but I still wouldn't mess around with them. Sometimes in the organization, we like to just watch them because it gives us entertainment. Alright, the next class is a Euclid. Euclid classification is generally applied to objects whose properties are not currently understood. Unlike safe class objects, there are no reliable containment procedures on Euclid class objects. This may be because the object either does not obey the known laws of nature or physics, or because its response to stimuli constantly changes. Objects classified as Euclid may be declined as safe if a greater understanding of their properties is achieved. Euclid class objects are not necessarily inherently dangerous, but they are unpredictable. For this reason, greater care should be taken around them. A wild animal, for instance, may be considered Euclid, as it may have unpredictable responses to stimuli. Keter, the strictest object class. Keter class objects can only be handled by Class D personnel. Remember what we were talking about back there in the clearance levels? Yeah, you don't want to mess with these things. Keter objects are naturally indiscernible to life and pose great difficulties in keeping them controlled. Hence the use of Class D personnel in their maintenance. Keter objects fall into one of two categories. Those that are of immense strategic value once controlled, or those who have been deemed impossible to destroy due to the nature of the artifact. In either case, the artifact is to be kept until it has been ascertained and replaced in a more controlled environment, or until a method of ensuring the object's permanent destruction is determined. Keter class objects are always inherently dangerous, despite the best containment procedures possible. The threat level may range from global Armageddon to simply killing everything around it. A hand grenade with the pin removed may be considered Keter. A single mistake will cause casualties. Neutralized objects. Any object that has been since destroyed, or in some way has no odd, extra-dimensional, or adverse effects. Objects classified under this class should have a side note stating what class it is while it was an active SCP. Finally, we have the Decommissioned Objects, reserved for objects that are not only destroyed, but they are disavowed by the Foundation. You probably don't have to worry about those. I mean, we've never had a problem with them in the past, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have a problem with them in the future. That's the only reason I'm really telling you about them. Okay, now that you've got all that, sleep on it. But sleep lightly. I better get off of here, seeing as how I have an assignment to take care of. I think 056 killed a few more test subjects. It's probably on the loose somewhere. You know, you'd think for a facility with secure and contain in the name, we'd be better at keeping those things locked up. Anyway, goodbye and good luck!